And we're back. Live. We are COMP229. It's the fall 2016 semester at Centennial, and we are week 10, part 1 of our broadcast. Right? That's how it goes. And so now what we're doing is we're talking about, this week, we're talking about models. But I want to do a little bit of administration for you guys. Of course, this is going to ask me all kinds of questions. So the administration piece is that your assignment 2 is due when? Next week, right? So this week, what I'm going to do is after I talk a little bit about models, and we're also going to follow the MVC Music Store example, I'm going to come around and check you, right? We're going to do this check and X example today, right? See how far you've gotten. And it's a good exercise, and the reason why I'm checking you is not to make you embarrassed, but because I want to know how far you've gotten, right, with your project. I find, like I said last time, is if I leave you too often, like you have a couple weeks to do it, you're not going to start until like the night before, right? Which is painful, right? It can be very painful for you. So that's why I'm checking you now to see where you're going, and also any kind of course correction. Because, for example, let's say the project is a fantasy restaurant, like put together your own fantasy restaurant. But what if you're doing something that's totally off? It's not exactly what I've asked for. This is a great time to course correct, and that's why I'm checking you. It's not for any other reason. All right, so we're going to be talking about models, and we're going to be talking about that. And I also do want to do a bit of a review of what we talked about last time, which is controllers and views. So if I go back, I'm switching now to PC. So Mac, PC, right? And if I, it's actually, yeah, that's correct. And if I launch Visual Studio 2015, it's going to be recorded exactly. Everything I say right now, if you talk, you're going to be immortalized, right?
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. I'm just doing a little bit of a demo for Sarah today. There we go. So your name is on YouTube for now and for forever. That's it. You're a celebrity, right? So once you've launched Enterprise, this Visual Studio 2015, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a template. I don't want to start again, right? Because last week we just did this whole thing with MVC Music Store. It's a waste for us to start yet again from scratch. So we're going to use Visual Studio to create a template of last week's work and start this week's work, right? So we can kind of continue. So for those people who forgot what it was, let's bring up COMP229 F2016 lesson 9. That's last week's work. Let's bring that up. So one day with my virtual machine responds, we're going to get it. And sometimes it's already done, but it's loading. I'm just too impatient, which I'm sure some of you are as well, right? Oh yeah, this is just like, it's because of Sarah. It's because, see, last week I was just saying Trump a lot, because we had the Trump nightmare become real, right? No, I'm not. God, no. This week we have a better situation. We have Sarah visiting, which is good, right? Okay, looks like it's loaded now. So if you look at it in Solution Explorer, it should come up with all the files. And this is what we worked on last week. We don't want to lose this. We don't want to start from scratch, because that's a waste of time. So we want to create a template. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Export Template. It's going to ask us for the project template. Now, we've done this a number of times. We did it for your exam, and we're going to do it again for your next exam. So your final exam, you're going to have to do this thing, this export template stuff. So I'm going to create a template for my project. Click Next. Great thing is it's recorded, so if they don't remember the steps, it's okay, right? And if you notice the template name, I'm going to leave it alone this time, because I want to go from lesson 9 to lesson 10 anyway. I'm not going to choose any of the other options. Leave everything checked as default, and when I'm done, I should be able to click Finish, right? When I'm done and I click Finish, I'm waiting for my File Explorer to come back up. When I see my File Explorer come back up, I know that my template has been completely and correctly deployed. So notice now that I have File Explorer, that means my template's there. I'm going to close down File Explorer because I don't really need it. It's just what Microsoft does for you. And mine might look a little different than yours, because yours might actually see the zip file that you're creating. Mine won't, because I'm on a virtual machine. I'm going to click File now, Close Solution, right? Because I'm leaving my lesson 9 alone, right? And I'm opening up lesson 10. So let's do this. So I'm going to go File, New, Project. And as we go into the new project, we're going to look for our template, which, if you scroll down, is right here, right? Now, it's under C#. We're not looking at web. If you looked at web, you wouldn't see it. If you look at C#, it's way down here at the bottom. If you scroll all the way down, and if it's under lesson or COMP229, lesson 9, notice that it'll give you the lesson right here. Obviously, it's not lesson 91 we're doing lesson 10, right? Make sure that create new Git repository is selected because we're going to use Git as a revision control system still, and press OK. If you did things correctly, it'll copy your links to your database. That'll be preserved, as well as all the files we had from last week, but it'll be called lesson 10, so we won't mess with lesson 9. Okay, what's the next steps? We've done the new project. What's next? What do I want to do? I can't hear you. Build it? Oh, you're good. Let's build a project now. So we're going to click on Chrome to make sure it works, right? And if everything goes well, we're going to have a sample or an example of what our project looks like. What's after that? Well, no, what's after that? What do we do after this? After we have our project working, what's the next steps? What do I always do after this? Or I should always do, huh? Because without GitHub, if something goes wrong with your machine, your dog ate your laptop, right? Hina, right? If your kid drew on it, right, or something like that, my kids draw on my stuff all the time, right? Then it won't work anymore. And you're going to say, Tom, my assignment's gone because my kid toasted my laptop, right? But this way, if it's on GitHub, who cares? Because you can always download it from GitHub. It's a cloud service, right? And you have it. So how do we do GitHub? Team Explorer. We're going to go to Home. It's going to take us to these options: Changes, Branches, Sync, and Settings. We're going to go to Sync. And one day, we're going to see that this area here, if you've got the GitHub extension for Visual Studio 2015 Enterprise Edition, it's going to come up here and click Publish to GitHub. And then we have to choose an organization. For me, I have several organizations that I work with, but I'm going to choose the one that applies to us, which is Centennial, right? And here's your GitHub link. This is what it's going to be, and click Publish. And once this is done, you have access to my files on GitHub, right? Has anyone not done this? By the way, whenever you start a new project, assignment, whatever, do the same thing, because automatically you're going to get points. All of my assignments are structured that GitHub is worth 4 points, right? 2 points for a backup, and 2 points if you use GitHub as part of your workflow. If you don't use GitHub as part of your workflow, then it's only worth 2 points, and you lose 2 free marks, which doesn't make any sense to me. That's like the easiest thing you can get is GitHub. All right, so that's the first part. So the first part is we upload everything to GitHub. We have our solution. This is our project. These are our project files. This is for your benefit. And then now what we're going to do this week is talk about models. All right, so again, we've talked about views last week, right? We talked about how to generate views through a scaffold, right? We've talked about controllers the week before, right? We have this store controller. We're going to create another controller this week, and we're also going to follow the walkthrough that's up online. So for those people who don't know where the walkthrough is, on the MVC Music Store walkthrough, it's on Slack for you guys, right? But if you want to find where that is, it's here, right? So we've gone through, without knowing it, we've gone through the walkthrough, right? If you don't know the link, if you go to Slack, I think several weeks back we put it up. So if I look at COMP229, and if I scroll way up, and of course I'm looking at the wrong thing, there we go. Scroll way up, right? There's the MVC walkthrough, and if it's not here, I think I also put it up on eCentennial, right? So just to make it easy, it doesn't matter because some of this gets wiped away. And by the way, this is our communication we have between each other. It's a group chat kind of thing that we use. I'll just put it up there. So this is part 4 is where we're starting off today. So grab part 4. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go to Slack, and under the general channel, I'm going to put it in. All right, so this is where we're starting off. So click on that link, and it'll take you to where I'm at right now. Okay. So this is what we're going to be doing today. And I'm also, so we're at the right place. Now I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint, which is up on eCentennial, because I've shared the PowerPoint with you as well. And I want to talk a little bit of theory before we begin into the practical. You've got your project ready. You've got GitHub going by now. You've got this, which we're going to follow. We're going to finish off this walkthrough. And now you've got the PowerPoint presentation, which we're going to go into, which is week 10, models. Let's bring this up. All right, so if this actually works, yay. So again, we're going to talk about these following things. We're going to talk about how models apply to the music store we've been building, right? We're going to talk about scaffolding. We really briefly touched on it last week, how we have a controller, a model kind of scaffolds the controller scaffolds out the views, right? And now we're going to be talking about model or scaffolding a little bit more. We're going to be talking about how to edit albums, because that's part of our music store, and about model binding. How does that work? How do you bind a model to the view and to the controller? So again, a lot of review of what we talked about already. Remember that there's three parts to going back to PC, there's three parts to the model view controller pattern. The first one we talked about was controllers, and just a review. Here's our store controller so far. It looks like this. This is our code. Now this is what we did at the end. We kind of took away this part, which was the example, where we had disco, jazz, rock, and electronic. Someone, who said electronic last week? Was it you? Right? Okay. And then we put electronic in there. And then we changed it to read from the database, right? Because we have a whole list of genre from the database. And again, we're connecting to the database. This is really important for your assignment too. We need to connect to the database, and I do it at the top of my controller. It's more efficient than doing it in each of the methods, right? If we do it in each of the methods, it's kind of a waste, right? Because I'm doing it over and over and over again, and it's a little slower, right? So here what I'm doing is I'm just sending in the list of all my genres to the page. And if you look at the views folder, this is related to the store. And if I look at my index, in this particular case, it's index.cshtml, right? Because I'm looking at the index action. Each action, and this is for Javid, right? Each action in your controller, because you kind of confused, each action relates to a view, right? Each view is just a page that I'm looking at, right? So it's a different way of looking at things. And when you're looking at HTML, typically we have flat pages, index.html, then we have maybe a contact page, we might have an about page, whatever. Here, what we're doing is, remember, we're mashing the layout, which is a layout that's common to all of our pages, with our view on the back end, on the server side. So the server side takes the view, which in this case is index.cshtml. Our layout.cshtml smashes them together to produce an actual page. That's why this is server-side computing, if you will, right? But it happens from the controller. The controller is the one that sends information, data, to the page by returning a view object. This view object, we're sending in a list of genre that's coming from our database, which is right here. So here we're connecting to the database, and then we're accessing the genre table that's in the database. We're converting it to list and returning it to our view. And if you look at our view, it looks like this. We're receiving. So we'll go back. Here we're sending. Up here on the top lines, line 1 and 2, we're receiving the object, right? And then we're using it inside of our view. And we're listing it. First of all, we're saying how many genres are there. We're using model count to find out how many objects there are. And then inside of an unordered list, that's what this is, we're running a for each loop that's going to generate list items according to how many genres are in your table, your genre table. So it's looping through. So for every genre in the genre table, it's creating another list item. That's why it's dynamic. And by the way, I really do hate that word. Dynamic is kind of a real misnomer these days. It's just server-side connections with the database is generating your code for you. That's what's happening. So then when I run it, going back to this, we get that effect. We're going to see a list of genres, and this list of genres is coming from the database. That's what's happening. I'm not generating this list. Right? So it's just, there's no electronic, sorry, right? There's just rock, jazz, metal, electronic. These are all the ones. And if I click on rock, I'm going to see that I'm browsing rock genre. We're going to go more into it today when we follow our walkthrough. So we're just going to again generate some albums and stuff. Make sense? All right. I don't want to keep you if you have to go. Okay. So that's the first part. So the first part is what we're doing when it comes to our controllers and our views. Now remember that we don't have a controller unless we have a model, right? And our models, we have several. We have an album model, an artist model, and a genre model, right? Those three models. These models are simply classes that map one-to-one with the tables in our database. So if a field in a class, example, this is all review, right? If a field in a class like album ID is here, it's listed here. That means that inside of our table data on the database, there's an album ID field. If it's here, it's also there. And remember, we're using Entity Framework to map, to create a relationship between our database and our project, right? Entity Framework allows us to map our tables that exist in the database and create a class that's related. Okay, I'm going to ask some questions. What are these things? We kind of didn't talk about this, but we're going to be talking about it today. What are these little things in square brackets, right? Any idea? Huh? I cannot hear you. You have to speak a little louder because and strong for the camera. I mean, go for Sarah. Huh?
Database.
Yeah. Correct. So what the answer is that if the field in the database cannot be null, right, then it translates to it being required on the class side, right? So if the database says you can't leave it empty, here's what it does. It reinforces that relationship. That's what it does, right, on the model side. And by the way, for those people who are watching at home or even here, right, these square brackets, these are called annotations, right? Also called filters. Those are the two options. So filters or annotations. And the annotations are there for us, for C# to tell the class that when I generate my views from this model, that this particular field is required. And it's going to generate different HTML. We're going to see that today. So the model can actually drive what the view is going to look like through the controller. It's like a 3-stage process. Starts with the actually it's 4-stage. If you think about the database, because you're going to do a database first, right? Approach. Code first with database. We're going to start with the database. It's going to link to the controller or to the model. The model's going to generate the controller and the views, right? That's what we've been doing. And last week we did that exact example, right? Where we have here's our store, and we also have a genres folder. Let's do one for artists to kind of recap, right? We're just doing review from last week. So what do I do if I want to generate the artists controller? I don't have an artist controller yet. I want to generate it from the model. What do I do? I got to hear from other people. Javid, what do I do? Right click on the model, yeah? Which model? Artists, right? And then? Add, okay, so we're going to find where the add is. So where's add? I don't see add here. I'm confused. Show me, help me. Is it artist that I click on, or do I click on something else? Oh, on the folder, our models. Okay, so I click on here, and then I click add. Controller, okay, I like that. That's good. We're step by step. You help me. Are you sure? This one? Good. It's good to be sure. Did you miss something? You're looking at me, and you got this look on your face, like you got a squinty-eyed look, which is telling me you missed something. It's okay. Hold on. You're faster than I am. You're going too fast, man. You have to record yourself. Hold on a second. I'm going to click add, right? And then, once I click add, what do I do now on my model class? What do I put there? Well, then I would tell you the answer, right? Artists, right? Yeah. Click on artists, right? Okay, there we go, artists. And then, what about here? Do I put anything in my data context class or no? Yeah, you get awesome. Okay, so why these two things? So this is the model that's relating to the controller that I'm generating. That's number one. And I need this data context class because the data context class links all the tables together from the database. So example, if I have foreign keys, right, in other tables, because there's a relationship between one table and another, right? Like for example, we're talking about a music store, right? So I have albums. Albums has a artist. Therefore, there's an artist relationship between the album and artists, right? Same thing with genre. Each album has one genre, typically, right? But an artist may have multiple albums. So that's a different relationship, a one-to-many relationship, right? Typically, there could also be a one-to-many artists on an album. But in this case, we're keeping it simple. It's one artist, one album, right? Like if artists collaborated together to make an album, which they do these days, right? Like various artists, like a music mix or something. I don't know. Okay, so what about this? Should I click on use async controller actions? It's not too complex. We're going to show it today. You know, I'm going to show it. I want to click on this to show you what this does just now, just to show it, since we're talking, right? So let's click on this thing. It's not going to hurt you. Don't worry, right? Generate views. I should leave this blank? No. I want to generate everything. So what about this? What about yeah, I want to generate everything. What about reference script library? Should I do that? Okay. How about use a layout? Should I do that? I don't have to. I could if I want. I could kind of specify the layout CSHTML that's inside my shared folder, but that's very specific. And the reason why I don't do this is by default, I use this thing called view start, right, which is inside my shared folder, which is right here, which actually points to the right thing. It points to your layout.cshtml. Leave it blank. It's better. Because if I want to switch layouts, right, then I can only go to my view start and all the pages will switch layouts, as opposed to each individual one that have to go in there and modify the layout so it switches. It's far more efficient this way, okay? Now, how about this? Is this the right name for my controller? It is, artist controller, right? Usually when we make a controller, we have the name of the model, artists in plural, artists, and then we must have controller at the end to generate our controller. It's the convention that Visual Studio and Microsoft uses to generate your views properly. If you don't do it this way, it will fail. Click Add. Oh. What? What do you mean? I don't understand. I don't. I'm following your instructions, right? What do I do now? What if I scaffold it out? Would it be bad? If I click Add, bad things will happen, right? No, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to click Cancel. I knew this was going to happen. I was just waiting. It's not the models folder. When I want to generate a controller, we're generating in the controllers folder, right? So if I right-click on controllers, this is good though. You're almost there. If I generate on controllers, if I click out, let's do that again one more time. It's a good chance to see it again. Add controller. We go to MVC controller with views. This is all wizard-based. Like anyone can do this. This doesn't require code at all. It does it all for you. Add. And then from there, you're going to click on those things. We know it was artists. See music store context. We're going to use async controller actions, and now we have the same situation as before, right? Except this time, it's going to go in the right folder, controllers.
So what happens if you add what?
You're going to have to erase it by hand. You cannot. It would be catastrophic failure. It would not refactor correctly. All right. So please don't try and do that. Yes. You will have a lot of changing to do. Please do not do that. Just erase the controller and erase the views and start over, right? And that's the great thing about this. Once you scaffold, you can scaffold many times, right? Even if you make a mistake, who cares, right? Start over. All right, so I'm gonna click Add now. Is that okay, Javid? Are we good? All right. Oh, you almost scared me there. Scaffolding, right? Now, remember that we have a problem with scaffolding if you haven't built your project for the first time, right? So if you haven't built your project, it's gonna fail. We built our project. We did that right when we created our template, right? And now we're good. So now this is what it gives us. It gives us a pre-built, without any code from us, artist controller. And because we selected all, right? We selected a model. Each one of these methods is related to a page, right? So we have several pages now. Okay, good. How do I get to the artist controller now? I want to see all my artists. What do I do to get there? I want to run my project, so let's run it now. And I want to see my artist controller. What's the path? We don't have a link for the artist yet. But if I was going to type it manually, what would be the path up here to get to my artists? /artists, right? Because it follows controller first and then the actual page. If I really wanted to, could I put it in control artists index? Can I do that? I could do that, right? Or by default, artists is enough. Notice right now, we don't have a link for artists up here, right? But if I wanted to see them, I could just simply put in artists. And then, is it artists or artists? What do you think it is? Artists. Why? Because the controller is artists controller, right? Now if I press enter, then we should be able to pull up a list of artists. And it's going to be in a tabular format because that's the default format for MVC, right? Notice what it's given us. We have all kinds of functionality built in. I created a new artist if I want, right? I could edit an artist like AC/DC. Let's edit this artist. Okay, here's my AC/DC. I could edit them if I really want to. not going to. Right? I like AC/DC. But what about if I want to add another one? Like, we have a lot of artists, but what about that guy, that unfortunately died this year, Prince, right? He's not in this list, right? I think he's a great artist, right? Let's add him in. So click create new. I'm going to put in Prince. See, I've already done this before. And then click create. And if everything goes well, then if I scroll down on my list to find if he's there, right? And is he there? Where is he? Like way down here, you're saying, right? How come? How come he's way down here? Because we just added him. This is not in alphabetical format that you're getting the artist. This is not displaying in alphabetical format. We have to change our structure if you want to see all the artists in alphabetical format, right? This is the basic thing. Now, if I want to edit, if I want to get details for Prince, here's details Prince. I can go back. If I want to delete Prince, I can do that. Let's show you the delete functionality. So here's delete. Right? Now I'm deleting Prince. It says, are you sure? Right? If I want to, I click delete, and Prince is no longer in our artist list. Let's remove Prince. It's got down to summer for some reason, but Prince, no. Right? So whenever we scaffold without any code from us, as long as we use the entity framework, this is the lesson for today for models, right? It's going to scaffold things out. But remember what it's going to do. Right? It's going to scaffold all this stuff too, all the header information, right? So right now, all we're scaffolding out is the name of the artist. Why? Because if I go back to my table for artists, here's my artist model. What do I have in my models? I have my ID and I have my name. ID doesn't get scaffolded by default because this is the ID of the artist. Who cares about that? Right? It's a database thing. It's not something we have to share with users, right? This part here, which is a relation to albums. How come that didn't get scaffolded? Should we scaffold that out? Like, for example, what albums do artists have that are related? We don't have that, right? So we may have to think about how to scaffold that out or do it manually, right? But name definitely is required. Why is this not required? Right? Here's another thing. Is the name required? Look, it says artist ID, and do I have a requirement for name? Nope. So theoretically, I could leave it out, right? Which is kind of weird, right? Or kind of leave it blank. Let's test that functionality. There's no requirement for name. Can I just like generate new empty artist? Is that possible, right? Let's go back and check. So I'm going to go back to, and I'm going to create new, and there's no name, and create. And does it do it? Yep. That's bad. We need to fix that somehow, because that means I can create a bunch of empty artists, which doesn't make any sense, right? Because it's not required. Just like you said earlier, right? My annotations tell Visual Studio what is required and what's not, okay? And I can't leave that blank. It won't allow me to leave it blank. Okay. What if I want to change that? And this is part of the lesson today, which this is kind of a preview of what we're going to be doing, right? Because we're going to go step through all this again by manual. And again, if I forgive me if I'm boring you, right?
No, I'm just lost. I feel like I'm taking a course without a prereq, so
You're fine.
getting bits and pieces of it.
I'm going to delete this empty artist one, okay, just to show you. So here's something I want to try and do. I want to delete stuff. So I scaffolded wrong, or I want to change my scaffold. How do I delete everything? Should I delete my controllers, which my artist controller, and then delete the artist, the views? Should I delete both? What do you recommend? Both is the right thing to do. Why? Because models drives the controller, models drives the view, right? One more thing to note. In my artist's controller, we checked async actions, right? Did we not? All it did was add the word async in front. And instead of action result, we have something called a task, right? Asynchronous actions, what this is doing is it's causing it to run asynchronously, which means I can access it from many locations, and it's going to perform better with multiple users. So actually, async actions is recommended, yeah.
If I add a new table in my database,
yes.
in that case, what will it do?
Well, if you add a new table in your database, now you have a problem, because your connection to your tables does not include that table. Go to your DB context and change the table to add a new DB set, right? It's a problem, right? Because you're not selecting that, right?
Before starting, that means I need to confirm that this is my final database.
Well, if it's in your final database, as an example, let's say if you look at models, and if you look at MVC Music Store context, right? So the only tables I know about in my MVC Music Store context right now is my album, my artist, and my genre. Those tables are the ones that Entity Framework has found and that I've selected, because there's other tables I could have selected too, and I've included in this connection, my MVC Music Store connection. Now, if I want to add other ones, I have to physically list it here or run Entity Framework again with a new connection. Right? Take care, brother. Make sense? Yeah.
Did you say that model,
Yes, at the end of the day. Well, kind of. The controller drives the view, but the model drives the controller, so therefore, indirectly, right? It drives the view too. Let's find this out. So let's show you how to do that. So I want to kill my artist's controller for a second, and let me show you the difference. Now remember, using async actions is recommended if you're using a system that has lots and lots of users. If it's a mom and pop store, you don't need to use async actions. It's a little bit easier to understand. So I want to get, first of all, I want to get rid of my model. So my artist model, that's got to go. Actually, sorry. I want to keep my artist model. I want to get rid of my artist controller, this one. Don't get rid of your artist model, that'd be bad, right? Delete. All right, so that's artist controller's gone. Now I want to get rid of my artist's views. The whole folder's got to go, right? So that's gone. So my artist controller, and one day when Visual Studio updates, my artist view, my whole folder is gone. Why is this important? Because I don't know, undoing my scaffold, if you will. I don't want to say descaffold because it's not really a word, right? But just kind of undoing what I did, right? I'm undoing all my implementations. Okay, now I want to make it, even though it's not required in the database, here's where I'm going to change how the connection is between my database, right, and my model. And I want to show you what it can happen. Let's say I want to be smart, or I think I'm being smart, and I want to go into my artists. And in here, I notice that I have data annotations. I have to have this component model data annotations using statement here, and it's there by default, right? Because I'm using these data annotations right here, right? I want to change it so that my name, first of all, has two things. I don't want to just say name. I want to say artist name. So I want my view to say artist name, even though my table is showing name as the field. The display name that I want to use is artist space name. Instead of changing it manually, which you could do if you really want to on the HTML side, you can do it right from the model. That's the beautiful thing. So first, I'm going to put in a data annotation that says this model, this field is required. Okay? That's like saying not null. But remember, on the database side, we didn't specify that. I'm doing it on the model. The next thing is I want to change the display name. And if I start typing display where name is equal to, right, the display name is equal to artist name, I can specify that here as a data annotation, right? Again, this is all a preview of the stuff we're going to have to do in a second, right? So string length is 120, means that's how long the maximum length it's going to be is 120 characters, right? And this says, hey, change my tables. Instead of just saying simply name, change to artist name and make it required. Let's see if that works. So now we've got everything. We need to build because I've changed my model. If we don't build now, it won't work out properly. So please rebuild your project. So just go build. And if everything works well, it's going to build the solution and everything's good. If build fails, that would be bad to try and continue, right? Let's scaffold it out. Same way we did before, like Javid taught us, right? Right, Javid? Right-click, controllers, add controller. There we are. And under controller, we're going to try it again. MVC controller with views using Entity Framework. Click add. All the same stuff. It's going to pull up this. Notice that it remembered our model context because we already did this one time. I'm going to pull down artist. And this way, just to make it simple, let's uncheck use async controller actions for now. It's the same controller we're making, but we're rescaffolding it out. I'm going to click add. So it's going to be quite different. And I'm really looking forward to seeing my table come up that says artist name as opposed to just artist or name. Okay, here's something different, right? So there, it doesn't say task anymore in front of my my methods. It just says action result. Remember, it has to say async task. Async task means each task is running asynchronously. They're running separately. They don't have to run concurrently. I don't have to wait for one action to finish until I go to the next one, right? Here, I'm waiting. It's okay. It's okay to do. For most applications, this is just fine. All right, cool. What does our artist look like? So I'm going to run the code for the first time again, right? I'm going to go to my artist folder well, what do I do again? I go to artists, right? And of course, it remembers that I put this in already. So if I type in artists and press enter, it generate the artist. Now I want to see if I get an error because my artist, look, artist name, right? Because I put display name is equal to. This is really important to try and do, and I did it right from the model. So Eddie, to your answer is, yeah, the model is driving what the view is going to look like. The model also can drive validation on the view as well, especially if you're doing things like data entry. Okay, let's try this out. Here's the data entry validation I talked about. I'm going to create a new artist. Now, remember last time what we did? We just were able to go create, and everything was fine. But we put that required annotation there. Can I still do this? Can I still click create? And the answer is no. It stops us from doing that. And we didn't have to change any HTML, right? Or anything else. Everything is done from the model. The model doesn't communicate all the time with the database, right? Let's try and do this now. This is the key. This is the can it be done? So I'm going to type in prints. Remember, the model and the table are disconnected. They're not in sync with one another because one has a requirement that the table does not have. Will this cause an error? Let's click create. And if we go down, we should have prints right at the bottom. So no, the answer is no, it's good, right? So we're able to, and this is where I'm taking this, we're able to customize, right, our model, even though some of the requirements are not coming from the table. We can customize our model to make it more realistic and add a few more individual functionality, if you will, in functionalities, so that it kind of is deployed to the view, right, which is really, really important. Questions around this? What did I do? I changed my model. It's different than the table, but it also changed our view at the end. And it also changed not just one view, right? This is one view. This is the table, right? But it also changed our create. When we created our view, our little form, it changed the requirements, right? Okay, we're going to take a short break, right? And when we come back, we'll do the PowerPoint presentation, and I'll step you through the MVC Music Store as we go through this part 4 of our context. Next week, we're going to, again, just as a preview, we're doing security, which is going to be required for your final project with you and your team. Okay. So during the break, what I'm going to do before we continue the walkthrough is I'm going to come around and check you. So be prepared for me to yell check or X. Hina, are you ready? Good. So I won't yell X. Okay, no problem. Okay, guys, let's take a brief break, and we'll come back. So now I'm going to stop my broadcast.